So getting back to the monster names. When you name a German Shepherd Killer or Jaws, and then people see that, they see that this German Shepherds tend to be intimidating even if they're just a little kitten inside. And so if they see that and they put the name together, they're already nervous because of the breed of the dog anyway. And they may not need to be, there may be absolutely no reason for that, but they don't know that if they're just meeting you and your dog. And then you say this is Killer, this is Jaws, they've already got some nervous energy coming out, which the dog is perceiving as weak. Now they're going to be just fearful. They may not be overtly, but they're going to send that fear out inadvertently, subconsciously. And the dog's going to pick up on that. And even a really good dog might get a little bit nervous or slightly aggressive with somebody who meets him, just for that reason. So I really discourage the monster names. And of course degrading names as well on the other side of it. Most people tend to name their dogs either equal to them, human names, or higher above them. But there are degrading names, and those are just as harmful as well. We have had sessions with clients who have had very aggressive dogs, and just for an example, I'll pull one out of a hat. Cookie might have been the name of the dog. But the clients jokingly amongst themselves call him Cujo or Demon or Taz. And I will tell them as tactfully as I can, graciously as possible, that that is simply making matters worse. Whenever they do that, they're applying that negative, very powerfully negative energy that those names, such as Cujo or Demon or Taz or anything else you can think of that's very powerful and negative, to that dog. And because a dog is completely based on energy, they're kind of defeating the purpose of what the owner is trying to accomplish. They don't want the biting, and yet they're continuing to label the dog as something very evil and powerfully evil. So lift those labels off of the people in your life, off of yourself. That's a big one we didn't mention. And of course, since this show is called What Makes Your Dog Tick and other miscellany, off of your dog. And now for the big finale, children. People nowadays have noticed that over the years, children have gotten out of control. And this is simply because the parents really haven't known quite what to do. In some of our higher levels and in our schools, the teachers have been had their hands tied as to the reprimanding that they're allowed to do. And that has trickled down into the family as well. Parents are under the impression that they are not even allowed to spank their children anymore. Now, spanking is not beating. It's very different. And I'll talk about corporal punishment later. But the fact that we don't know what to do with our children, and we do live in a very affluent society, recession or not, means that we have children that have, first of all, a lot of stuff. They're not told no. There's no regulations on them, or very few, and they're being awarded freedoms and authority that they have not only not earned, but they have no idea what to do with. There again, I am not being critical to the parents. People perish for lack of knowledge, and that's what's happening here. So you'll hear a lot of similarities. If you've watched any of our prior shows, you'll hear a lot of similarities to the way that I talk about owners and their dogs. And at the end of this segment, I will tie that up for you. First of all, it's very important to expect good behavior from your children, whether they've been adopted or you brought them home from the hospital yourself, from day one. Now, with a little infant, there's a lot of figuring out, and everybody's in kind of a tumult for quite a while. But once you get things going and you've got a pattern and you're established, you need to make the same some rules, boundaries, and limitations for your children the same way that I always instruct you to do that for your dogs. Also, enforce them. Enforce it. Now, you can either teach your children one way or another. You can be proactive and positive about it, such as saying, okay, here's the deal. Here's what you can have, here's what you can't have. If you try to go over into the can't haves, there will be a consequence. This is what it will be. And then it's your job to enforce that consequence. Or you can count to 3, 6, 9, 12, and never do anything that you told them you would do. We had a gal living across the way. We had a wonderful summer several years back of all little children. Every child in the neighborhood except for 2 boys that were 4. All the other children were 2 and under, and it was a delight. The difficult thing for us was the parents. I had an alarm clock every morning at 9 o'clock. I was awakened to 1, 2, 3, and then she would yell out her little boy's name, and it just all began. And that was a tough summer for me, quite honestly. Now they're not anywhere near here anymore, so there's no issue with sharing that story. But the problem that I see with most parents when I do observe, and you can't help but in a grocery store, wherever you are, perhaps it is your neighborhood, is they don't back up what they throw out there so blithely in threats. I don't think threats are a good idea. I think you can tell your children, all right, here's how it's going to be, and here's what the consequence is going to be, and then just be sure you win. You enforce the consequence, make it realistic, make it a consequence that's fair. One thing we never did with Michelle, we tried never to give her consequences in such a way that it would affect her friends or another family. For example, if she was going somewhere with her friends and their family, maybe to the museum for school, we wouldn't say, well, we'll take away that museum trip, because that would affect them too. They want her to go, and so really calculate what you're going to use as a consequence. Make sure it's fair to both of you, and like I've mentioned in the Dogs Issues and the Appropriate Corrections program, don't push a baby buggy with a 747 jet engine. Sometimes we get way on overkill, and sometimes we are just about pretty much pathetic. So we've got to find a balance there as parents. And there again, don't be too hard on yourself. It takes time to reestablish these things. But either way, you're teaching your child to respect you, or you're teaching them not to respect you. It doesn't matter what you do, if you're on it or not. Both are training. One works, one doesn't.